Hey, what's up, gentlemen? Forgive the long delay since my last post. I got a number of hands I want to go over with you guys. It's my busy season. Also, forgive my background back here. We are doing work on the house, so I'm relegated to the back of my bedroom to put anything together. Um, I'm going to put this on YouTube. I'm going to put this public. I usually, as you know, send you guys videos that are private, but here I'll put them public. You never know when somebody else sees and wants to chime in, and we all, including myself, get a new perspective. If this is somebody new watching this, I'm a bit of a more accomplished player than the other guys here, although I have plenty to learn as well, and I'm open as long as it's given the right way, constructively and politely, to take criticism, because I know that I'm not always right. I'm going to review a bunch of hands. By the way, this background is for you guys, because everybody feels like they're a victim when they get the bad beats, and they think that they're the only ones that get them, and it does feel like that for all of us. But you got to keep the perspective, in place. We are not victims. If anything, we are, with variance in life in general, and especially in poker. Over time, we get the good and the bad, and the run bad and run good. I want to review 5 hands from a session I played the other day, and then also a bonus hand from Dane that he had told me about the other day. Mostly quick, especially that last hand. You'll see, by the way, this session, it was about 6 hours. I lost money. I lost $39.86. However, I ran bad because my adjusted expectation would have been a win of about $238.87, which comes out to 1677 big blinds per 100 hands, which is a little bit better than my average at these stakes. These stakes being 50 cent, $1 online. That's variance. I'm not crying about it. It's how it goes. And we're actually going to go through one of the hands that really crushed my variance, a bad beat that I took. But we're going to go through it from the perspective of learning, not from the perspective of, feeling bad for ourselves. And with that, let's get into it. First hand is very interesting. I'm going to go through this with you, and I want you guys, as we're going through this, to ask yourself what you will be doing given the situation. Let's analyze right now. Take a second and think what you would be doing here. Hit pause if you need to. Here's my analysis. We're playing 6-handed, 50 cent, $1 blinds, and we are in the cutoff. Meaning cutoff meaning that we're the second to act on a 6-handed table. Important to note, it's folded to us, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, he folds, and it's to us. Important to note that not only is this a good hand, but if we fold out these 2 guys, we're going to be in position on the blind, which is usually our ideal way to play, in position with playable hands. So this is, to me, an easy raise. And we get called instantly by player 5. Now, if you notice, this over here, 56 of VPIP, means that he's, of 43 possible hands I've played with him so far this session, he has called 24 of them. He's not been very aggressive. He's been a bit of a calling station. So this is the kind of guy that, even though in general, if I raise and a good player calls behind me, I'm a little bit nervous because he's got position on me. This guy is calling with such a wide range that I rate to be ahead of most of what he's calling. That's my analysis of that call. Everybody else folds, and it's just us. Okay, take a second. What's your analysis of this flop? Good. Hopefully you hit pause and did that in your own head. Here's my analysis of this flop. This is an excellent flop for us, because though this doesn't hit us, this gives us, obviously, the flush draw, a backdoor straight draw, meaning any 10 or any queen on the turn we pick up extra equity. And because this guy calls so wide, probably any king or any jack is going to win for us as well. Is going to put us ahead very often as well. So I like this flop. I take note that the pot is 750 and our stack sizes are what they are. And over here, I think that this is usually a down bet. I can get behind a half pot bet, but I probably bet a third pot here. And I'll tell you why. It's because when I bet smaller, it allows me to take away a bigger pot later on, because I'm almost certainly barreling any turn card, maybe with the exception of a non-diamond ace, but even then I'm probably barreling because I have plenty of equity. So let's see. I down bet to a third of the pot, and he interestingly enough re-raises me. Now this gets us to a very interesting spot. Let's think for a second. For a second, first think about what he could have. Hit pause if you need to. Now I'll tell you what I think he could have here. I think he's like, in fact, I think I even have an aid for this. I was thinking of all his value range that he could have here. And I thought he can have all ace nines, all king nines, I mean lots of nines, ace nine, king nine, queen nine, jack nine, 10-9, pocket nines. Ace nine here, all the suited, I'm sorry, ace nines. All the suited nines, ace nine, sorry, ace seven. So those are his value hands that are ahead of me at the moment. Of course, he can have over pairs, tens and jacks. The reason why I don't have queens, kings, and aces there are because I think queens, kings, and aces, even from a passive play, are re-raising me before the flop. So I don't really expect him to show up with those. He could have pocket nines, pocket sevens. He could have the 8-6s, which are straight draws. All these nines over here. So this is kind of like the range in my head, the value range in my head that I think he has. Now, by the way, in real life, I think he actually also has a lot of air, a lot of 2-over cards. This is what happens when you get with bad players. But let's give him credit for a second for all the value hands. Let's pretend he's only playing value hands like this. If that's the case, then my king jack, if you take a look, actually has 56% equity against that range, meaning I'm ahead of that range because of my flush draw and my backdoor draws and my simple king and jack draws as well. So think about what you would do here with that knowledge. Now, if you said you would call, yeah, it's probably a profitable play. You have a lot that you can hit on the turn. But for me, knowing what I know now, I prefer to jam here, I believe. The stack sizes are correct. 750 in the middle, plus his 914, plus my 2, so there's about 16 and change in the middle. And so a bet to 43 will do one of two things. Probably about half the time, all those value cards we talked about will fold. Of course, we're not going to fold up pocket nines, pocket sevens, pocket threes. But those are all folding. There's a bunch of weaker diamond draws that may call. Of course, there are a bunch of stronger diamond draws that may call as well. But I think I'm folding out probably half of his range, at least by shoving. And if he calls, as we already discussed, if he happens to call, I am ahead of the range of hands that he can have. And so I'm completely happy to win the pot half the time, to win $16 half the time, and be a favorite for a larger pot the other half of the time. And so I shove. And I think this is a pretty standard play from my perspective. I'd be curious if anybody better than me has any input. But to me, I think it's a standard play. And of course, he folds, which is going to happen most of the time. And I happily take down that pot. $25.78 pot. Okay, next hand. Okay, this is a heartbreaker, but this is why you play poker. Okay, assess the situation. You're under the gun with pocket tens. What's your move? Only move here is to raise, in my opinion. And so obviously I raised to 3. It folds to the small blind, who's only played 7 hands and hasn't played a single one yet. And he 3-bets to 10. Now, it's an interesting spot because when I raise under the gun, the earlier you raise, the stronger you appear. And so I raised early on, so I have a pretty strong range. For him to be 3-betting me, that's a pretty strong range of hands. That's probably 8s plus, ace king, ace queen, maybe ace jack suited, king queen suited. So that's a pretty, so it's a pretty strong range. Out of position, I maybe call. I'd probably call, and if I was out of position, rather, I would maybe call, or I'd think about it. But in position, I'm probably leaning towards a call. But when the small blind, who's a bit of a calling station, also he calls a lot in 38 hands. He's called 36% of the time. When he calls, that makes this a trivially easy call, even if you're talking just about for set value. What do I mean? When I call this bet of 10, I'm putting 7 more in with 30 in the middle. Now, that means when you're looking to set mine, you're going to hit your set 1 every 8.25 times. So meaning you want to make sure that you can win at least 8.25. Really, you want to, because you're not going to win the money every single time. You want to probably have even more than that, 15 times as much, possibly winning even 15 times as much of that. And so if I'm putting 7 in, and my chances are, if I'm putting $7 in, sorry for the stutter, guys, but if I'm putting $7 in, I want to make sure I can win at least 10, 15 times that much money. So that's at least $70 to $105. And I definitely have that possibility here, given how much is in the 30 that's already in their stack sizes. And therefore, that's a no-brainer to me. And we call. Okay. Flop is gold. You don't flop better than this. maybe it'd be better than this if the flop, yeah, if the flop wasn't so draw heavy. It would allow me to check behind and disguise myself, or just simply call. But what's your plan here? Well, let's wait till it gets to you, I guess. So now, very interesting. The guy that 3-bet before the flop simply checks. That's a really weird sign. That's either a sign of huge strength, but he can't have huge strength here because we're sitting on the pocket 10, so he can't have that. And he really can't re-raise with pocket 6s or pocket 5s. So this screams to me of an ace king, ace queen, king queen, 2 overcards kind of hand that's going to raise and check this behind. And then this guy, he's got a wide range. So this actually could hit his range very heavily. It's very possible for him to have straight draws here, 7-8, 7-9, 7-4 clubs, lots of hands that he could have here. And so, so playing against their ranges, this guy's range is pretty restricted to overcards here, and unpaired overcards, unfortunately. I wish he'd have pocket aces, kings, or queens here, because then I could really extract money from him, but his check indicates he probably doesn't. This guy, his check could just mean he's waiting for somebody else to bet, because he could have something. They check to me. I get a little disappointed because now I'm nervous that my bet, and I have to bet here, that my bet is going to get 2 folds, but I'm going to bet here to take the 2 folds. My plan is to bet here and likely take 2 folds because there are enough. I want to charge any flush draws that this guy may have, or this guy for that matter, or any straight draws. So I want to, or isolated, the last 10 could be out there, pocket 9s, 8, 7s, all that kind of stuff. And so therefore, I have to bet, and probably around half pot, a little over half pot makes sense. You want to raise it sometimes with 2 players in the hand, but look what happens. Then the under the gun raiser, he re-raises me. Now I'm thinking maybe he does have pocket aces, pocket kings, pocket queens, and I was wrong. Maybe he was trying to play tricky like, and he's just walking into my trap. And I'm licking my lips, but this guy's thinking for a while, and then he jams. This is the dream situation, right, guys? People are putting in their money, and you're holding the nuts. So, of course, at this point, what do you do here? Calling is not the right play. The jamming, if this guy's on a draw of some sort, or you want him to get the money in bed now. And I jam, and this dude calls. Now, for some reason, it's not showing you the cards, but I'm going to tell you what they had now. We're all in now. This guy had king, queen suited, so he had 2 overcards. I don't like his call because it's very possible that somebody's doing this with king, queen of clubs. It's very possible that somebody's doing this with a suited ace, and he's drawing next to dead for that. And this guy had 7-9 of clubs. So he's interesting because he had a, he had a gutter, he had a backdoor. He has a flush draw, and he's got a backdoor straight draw. Unfortunately for me, so now we have a nice $270 pot, and I have all the equity. Nope, this is the wrong board. Check this out. I'm a 68.3% favorite here to win $270. Unfortunately, as it plays out, the flush comes on the turn, and the board does not pair for me in the river, and they turn over the cards, and the king queen takes it, and I am out my stack, or I'm at $100 or whatever it was that I had. Unfortunate, but okay, it's a bad beat. It's a big bad beat because I could have won a big pot, and I didn't. But it's a good card to see how we played and to learn from. All right, let's do a few other hands real quick before we time out. All right, let's see the action, and you'll tell me what to do. Okay. Now, first 2 people to act fold, and the cutoff raises to 3. Now, when the cutoff raises to 3, remember, when somebody's raising in an early position, they're likely to be stronger. The cutoff raising range is smaller. Now, in 27 hands, he's raised about 20% of the time, 19% of the time. But either way, I love playing in position against one person where I can kind of extricate value and really play well after the flop. So to me, from a cutoff raise, unless this guy is playing even fewer hands, against any normal player or especially a bad player, I'm going to 3-bet this all day long because I want to isolate. And I want to have more money in the pot when I play in position. So that's what I do. Now, again, he does something that many bad players do. He will add a position, call a 3-bet. Now, there are cards he can do that with. Middle pairs, obviously aces, kings, queens, jacks, probably even 10s, ace, king, ace, queen suited. All those hands should be 4-betting me here. So if he's simply calling, I'm not putting him on any of those hands, to be honest. And I'm putting him on weaker aces, maybe ace queen off. There is a stronger ace out there, but mostly weaker aces, middle pairs, and things like that. It's important to know. Okay, so now, and here's another piece I want you to think about, is the pot size is already 20 bucks and we haven't even hit the flop yet. Meaning it'll be pretty easy for me to get the money in, given a flop turn and river bet still to come if he has something and I have something. So my plan already is, with that much money in, I'm going to be looking to bet smaller on the flop. And in fact, in 3-bet pots, I'm always in general, betting smaller, usually a third of the pot on the flop, half on the turn. So I'm saying this because I'm already thinking about this in my head, making a plan for the flop and the turn. Should I be betting? And I will be betting in position most flops, not all, but most. This is an interesting flop. Let's do analysis. I don't have any nines. He's got all the nines. He's a lot of his range, 10-9 suited, Jack-9 suited, 9-8 suited, 9-7, ace-9, king-9. There's a lot of nines in his range. So I don't like this flop at all. And honestly, if he bets, I'm prepared to throw it away. And so he checks and I make, I can get behind a check behind also, but in this instance, I decided to bet a third of the pot. Again, against weaker players, I can see myself getting a fold. If he responds with a 3-bet, then I'm going to assume I'm beaten, throw it away. But it's a harder board for him to hit. So, I bet a third of the pot. I think I fold out enough. Again, when I'm betting 627 into a pot of 25, I only need him to fold about a third of the time for this to be a profitable bet. And I think that happens about. But in this instance, he calls. Okay, turn is the ace of clubs. Good card, bad card for us? I'm not sure. Because there are a lot of clubs that are in his range that would have called here that just made a flush. He's still got lots of nines that he could be playing sneaky. So I'm really weary here. And so when he checks behind, as a result, I check behind back, I think. Good, I do. And so that, that's for, I don't know what's calling me that I beat over here. And again, also because I look a little bit weaker when I check behind. So maybe hands like, middle pocket pairs or, pocket tens, pocket 8s, pocket 7s, 6s, 5s, 4s, or one club draw hands may think that they're ahead or they could be drawing to that flush. Okay, I didn't say that clearly at all, but, I'm tired. River brings the 2. Now, this is interesting. If he bets here, if it's a large bet, I may have to fold. If it's a small bet, I may have to make a crying call, but he checks. Now, when he checks, let's think of his action before. He called a 3-bet before the flop. He called a small bet on the flop. He checked the turn and he checked the river. If he had a 9, I would have thought that he would have woken up probably in the turn, but certainly by the river. If he had an ace, I would have thought on the river he might have bet, or he might be willing to check call over here. So here's the interesting thing, is that if I bet, so I think it's very likely that he has something like, a pocket pair, a middle pocket pair. Maybe he's got a 3. Those all fit the puzzle there, and so I really want to. I really want to extract some value, but I'm nervous that if I'm right and he has a middle pocket pair, if he's got a single 3, he's not going to call a standard size bet. So what do I do here into a pot of 32? I'm going to put out a really, really tiny, this is a very big lesson, put a really tiny bet of 12 bucks, a third of the pot. But I think that weak hands can call. And he does call, and he showed pocket 4s. It's not showing here, but he had pocket 4s. And so I was right in that read. And it's important to note that sometimes on that river, sometimes we're so relieved not to get a bet that we just tap the table and check back. And we're happy with the smaller pot. But I pulled out an extra 12 bucks, an extra 12 big blinds by making that little tiny bet on the end. And I think that's a pretty good lesson to learn. All right, let's see what else we got. All right, here's a fun one. Same concept. Oops. Same concept. Folds to the button who raises to 3. Okay, he raises to 3. Now again, remember we said the earlier the raise, the stronger the probability of it being a stronger hand. So this is the button. That is generally the place where you get the most raises. I raise probably half my hands on the button, maybe close to that. And so my ace jack offsuit rates to be ahead of the majority of his raising range here. Of course, he can have a monster. It's possible statistically, but it's also possible that you know, he's got, you know, a million other hands that I'm probably ahead of. So I 3-bet, and it's an easy 3-bet. I 3-bet, and I'm happy to take the pot down right here. But with him being in position, he could be calling with a large number of hands. And this is interesting. He 3-bets me. Now, I should give you a little history. I forgot. I had re-raised this guy's button twice already. If you see, in 98 hands, I have only 2 3-bets. They were both against this guy in the same situation. And if you look at his numbers, 99 hands, he's an 18, 18, 26. He's a pretty solid player. This is a good player. So what I might do if somebody was playing at me a lot was I might 3-bet him to play back. So it's a very, I can get behind the call here, I suppose, but to me, this was a no-brainer. I mean, I can go behind a fold rather, I suppose, but I choose to call here because, again, I feel that I'm a strong player post-flop, and, you know, given my edge post-flop, I believe that, you know, even out of position, this is worth the call, calling another $18 into a pot of 41. I'm getting pot odds of 2.34 to 1, so I only need to be good 30% of the time here. And I think I'm right around that. I'm a little ahead of that even, but, you know, but not by much. So I call 58 in the middle, and if you notice, our stack size is the stack to pot ratio is very low. So this is probably getting all in most of the time. This is a great flop for me. And again, you're going to notice going back to that King Jack of Diamonds hand, the way I like to think on these flops. This is a great flop for me because, you know, he's 3-betting. Let's say for a second he's got a monster. He could have aces, he could have jacks, but I block aces and jacks. So there's only 3 other combinations of aces possible, 3 combinations of jack possible. There's 6 combinations of kings possible, 6 combinations of queens possible. If he has kings or queens, even if he's got a club, because I have an ace, that's 3 out, and there are 9 other clubs there, or 8 if he's holding a club, I have plenty of outs. So again, I'm gonna have lots of outs if he has that, and I'm gonna be able to put pressure on him. So I check here, and of course, he down bets to $18 into the pot of 76, leaving him just about a pot size bet left. And to me, again, I think that I'm gonna shove here, I assume, because I believe in these situations, I'm gonna get a fold at least half the time and collect a nice juicy pot for nothing. And the other half of the time he calls, and I think I have about 50% equity, you know, to win, you know, to win a $76 pot. Or to win, well, at that point, it'll be a $150 pot. So of course, I jam, and he thinks for a long time and ends up folding, and I take the pot all for myself without that risk. You know, and again, there's points where aggression is really, really a good thing in poker. All right, last hand of mine, then we'll get to Dane's. Interesting one, it's a quick hand. This is a hand that you guys probably see all the time. Under the gun, who's actually second to act now because, you know, the first act wasn't at the table. He limps. Very weird, weak move. This player had only played 6 hands and limped 2 of them already, so it's a very weak move. But I don't have a strong hand. Folds to the small blind, who completes. I can get behind maybe a raise here because, you know, maybe you fold out the 2 players, but honestly, I am not a, you know, this mic is so sensitive. But I can get behind a raise here, but I choose simply to call. Flop comes 8-5-2. Interesting flop. Now, again, when there's a raised pot, it generally gets checked to the person who raises, you know, to see if they continue their aggression. This is a limped pot. So with top pair, I think it makes sense for me to be the one to initiate the aggression. So when it gets checked to me, I bet a little less than half the pot, and they both call. Now let's assess that for a second. What do you think they could be having if they both call? Well, it's interesting. They could have, over pairs are unlikely. You know, over pairs are unlikely, but, you know, pocket 9s and up are unlikely because they're both raising before the flop. All those hands are raising before the flop. They could have another 8. I'm ahead of a lot of 8s. I'm behind a lot of 8s. I'm ahead of ace 8, you know, king 8, queen 8, jack 8, you know, I'm tied with jack 8, you know, but there's 10, 8, 9, 8, you know, 8, 7, 8, 6, you know, I'm behind those 8, 5, I'm ahead of, you know, I'm right in the middle of the 8 ranges, but with 2 hearts on the board, there are a ton of heart draws these guys can have. And also in a limped pot, lots of 6, 7s, three fours that would be open and straight draws. There's a lot of draws that are possible on this flop. Turn is a queen. Queen doesn't really scare me. What's really calling? What queens are really calling here? Queen 8? Maybe, but I was behind that already anyway. Queen 5? I don't think so. It's not a likely limping hand. Queen 2. So the queen doesn't really scare me over here unless somebody had a heart draw with a queen in it. It's possible. But the most likely heart draw with the queen is probably the queen jack. And I block the queen jack because I'm holding the jack of hearts. Why do I say the most likely heart draw? Is because ace queen is probably raising and king queen is probably raising also of hearts. Those suited hands. So, queen jack, maybe queen 10, I suppose. But there are a couple of heart draws that that just got there and ahead of me, but most of them aren't. And all the flush draws still missed, and all the straight draws still missed. And so therefore, I rate to be ahead in my mind. And so when it gets checked to me, I bet again, but this time bigger. This time instead of half the pot, I bet roughly 70%. It looks like over here. And to my frustration, this guy's still hanging on, and this guy folds. Okay, so what's he hanging on with? Again, it could be a stubborn 8. It could be a 2 pair, but it's much likely there are far more flush draws and straight draws out there that I think he's holding on to. And so when the 3 bricks out, I believe I'm ahead. But if I bet, most of those hands that I'm ahead of can't call, meaning I believe I'm ahead with a lot of straight draws and flush draws. Although a 4-6 gets there, the only 4-6 really that could get there is 4-6 of hearts. And if that beats me, so be it. And 4-6 of clubs also, I guess. He could have called, with a gut shot and a back door on the flop and then picked up the club draw on the turn. That's possible. So I guess there are 2 flush draws out there, but the majority of the flush draws are much more realistic to be a 6-7, a 6-7, a 3-4, a 7-9, things like that. And so therefore, because I can't get called by those hands, my plan now is to check, hoping that with his missed flush draw, he's going to have to bet and I can pick up a pot. It's an important thing to note. So of course I check, and lucky me, he puts in a 2/3 size bet, which is exactly what I would bet personally. Well, the truth is I may overbet if I was trying to push somebody off of with a busted, when I had a busted flush draw, but that smells like my plan exactly. And so I call the bet, and look at that, he turns over 7-9. So he had 7-9 of clubs. So he had a gut shot with a gut shot straight draw with a backdoor flush draw on the flop. He picked up a full flush draw on the turn to go with his gut shot, and then when he missed, we read it perfectly correctly and got to pick off that bet over there. So just some interesting stuff, some good hands for you guys. Last thing for you guys, if I can find it, Dane sent us a hand that he played, that I have here and share my pair, I think. Hours of boredom followed by moments of sheer terror. No limit hold'em. Well done. If this doesn't bring it up in a second. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so this is a hand that Dane played live. This is Dane over here. It doesn't come up in the share my pair, but he had ace queen offsuit. Here's an important thing I want you to note. Rando, some rando, another rando, the villain, this is the guy we play against, the button, our hero Dane, and a small blind. If you notice, everybody's playing deep stack, which is what I normally play, but Dane is playing short stack, and the short stack game is very different. So let's look at Dane's situation here. Okay, how do I pause on this? Okay, so we have, I don't know why it's not showing up, but Dane had ace queen offsuit, and it gets folded to the cutoff, who raises 15. Now 15 is a very large raise, but don't forget live, this is more standard, okay? Now remember what we said about the cutoff raising range. It's about raising ranges. When you're early to act, a raise from earlier on suggests a stronger hand. The later you get and closer to the button, the easier it is to raise because you'll have position after the flop. So a raise from the cutoff is not necessarily strength, especially if he raises bigger, because that's probably he's probably trying to pick up blinds. And it's a short hand, but I wanted to stress to you guys, because what happens here is that from my position with only $60 back, only 30 big blinds back, to me, this is a no-brainer shove. A no-brainer shove. I don't like calling, and the reason I don't like calling is because, I don't know if you guys know the numbers, but with ace queen offsuit, you'll only hit your flop a little less than a third of the time. And that means 2/3 of the time you're missing the flop. And when he continuation bets, you have to fold. And to lose a quarter of your stack, where you're going to have to fold 2/3 of the time. And by the way, even if you hit, you may be behind. Let's say you hit your ace and this guy's raising with ace king, which is possible. So instead, in this position, I am a strong proponent of shoving all in, especially short stacked. Deep stack may be different. Deep stack I can get behind a call maybe, or a 3-bet sometimes. But here, the shove is the only thing that makes sense to me. Unfortunately, button folds, Dane calls, and the small blind folds. Flop comes total bricks, and Dane is forced to check with his ace queen with an overpair, over cards rather. The villain bets a small bet 10 as if he wants a hand like Dane's to call, which he might. It might not be a bad bet. And then on the river, when it comes a 10, although Dane has a gut shot now, and a king will give him a straight, and a 9 will give him a straight, actually. He's got a double gutter. And he's got 2 overcards. Either way, as the hand played out, the villain bet, I think, and Dane had to fold. He felt he had to fold over here. Yeah, and he felt he had to fold, which I guess kind of makes sense with the odds. He has a lot of equity. He doesn't beat many. He doesn't beat many bluffs here, but he does have he does have 8 straight outs, and a queen and an ace may give him equity as well. That being said, this hand is a situation I'm not familiar with playing because I don't play short stacked, and if I was in the situation, I'd be jamming all the time. And when you're playing short stacked, you have to get used to you have to get used to jamming and not calling, especially out of position. All right, fellas. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for putting up with my stuttering. I do want, as the fourth quarter ends, to put together more videos for you all. And hopefully you guys will pick up so you can come closer to my level so you can make money, and then you can, steal, sharpen, steal. So then you can, as you get better, you can then push back against me and help me get better as well. Because although I believe, although I'm a profitable player and I believe everything that I said, I also know that probably part of what I said that I currently believe was wrong. And I really like learning, and that's how you get better, to kind of put yourself out for that. All right, guys, let me know what you think.